Hi guys, I try to avoid talk TV as much as possible as it contains some of the vilest humans in media. One of which is well known to many, Isabel Oakeshott, Reform UK Richard Tice's partner. So in this clip that I had to respond to, she attacked people on benefits because, as I keep saying, the purpose of these channels is to direct as much hate and ire at the poorest in society. Oakeshott called people on benefits parasites, living off the graft of taxpayers. The host also attacked the budget for increasing spending on the NHS, and of course Keir Starmer too, who he called a socialist. Have a listen to this tripe.
Can you think of anyone that this budget is actually for, unless, apart from public sector workers and the NHS, which he's raising money to chuck at? You know, as I said yesterday, throwing £22 billion at the NHS, you might as well actually build it into a bonfire and set fire to it for all the effect it will have. But
does that even warrant a response? The NHS has been underfunded. Now, when the Tories talk about, well, we've put in record funding into the NHS, yes, but is it enough? And where does it go? That's the second question. The first question has to be, when it comes to NHS funding, is it enough? And if the answer is yes, where is that money going? Because a lot of it is going into the private sector.
Apart from the NHS and public sector workers, I don't think anyone at all benefits from this budget.
Well, I'll tell you who benefits from this budget: the people who do the least. So basically benefits claimants, because what this budget should have done is incorporated a massive campaign to reduce the welfare bill. I mean, the welfare bill is out of all control. It is ludicrous how many young people are supposedly too sick to work and being supported by the state. These figures are absolutely off the chart, and they are completely unjustified. And by not announcing such a crackdown, Rachel Reeves basically turned this into a budget of removing resources from those who work in order to keep on sustaining those who frankly can't be bothered to get out of bed and get themselves out, whether it's to an office or to any kind of job, and prefer to just sit on the sofa and order their Deliveroo and drive their Motability free vehicle and take everything that the state can offer. And the state, well, that is people like you and me and our very many listeners who are grafting just to try to make ends meet. And basically, these people are, frankly, parasites.
You know who are parasites? Are the multimillionaires and billionaires who refuse to pay their taxes, who squirrel money into offshore bank accounts. There are people who are connected to her husband or partner's party who are parasites. Parasites are people who are supposed to represent their constituents but prefer to go and do jobs in the media. I'd call them parasites. Living off the taxpayer's expenses, but not actually providing services for the taxpayer. Those people are parasites, not people who are struggling to get by. I've said before, are there people who game the system? Yes, but the vast majority of people on benefits are either waiting to get an NHS appointment so they can get back into work. About 40% of people who are on universal credit are working as well. So we're talking about a very, very small number of people. But as I keep saying, these channels like Talk TV and GB News are designed to make middle class people, and to a certain extent working class people, angry. Angry at who? Angry at the poorest in society. Never look up. Never look at the multimillionaires and billionaires. No, they're actually described as wealth creators. Even though many of them don't, the only wealth they create is for themselves. They're the job creators, although many of them don't create jobs. These people need to be protected, not the poorest in society, not people who are working 0-hour contracts, or people who can't work because they can't get an NHS appointment, because the NHS has been run into the ground by people that these people support, the Conservatives. Reform UK. Reform UK aren't in power, but the policies that Reform UK want to push are very similar to those of the Conservatives. Can you imagine if Nigel Farage was in power? Do you think he'd bring down the waiting list? Do you think he'd make sure that doctors and nurses are paid enough so they'd stay in Britain? Of course not. So instead of being angry with people who have, in many cases, literally nothing, you should be angry with the people who are squirreling away cash into offshore bank accounts, people who are finding loopholes to avoid paying their taxes, people who are corrupting a system, a political system, by making massive donations to political parties in order to gain favour. You should be angry with them. They are the parasites.
Well, to borrow from Joe Biden, the word of the week, this budget is garbage. It's left-wing garbage. And these people, Starmer and the gang, they're just extreme socialists. Socialists are such idiots. Socialism has failed and failed and failed and failed. Everywhere people try socialism as a way of running the country, it ends in catastrophe.
Can you give us an example of how this budget is a socialist budget? In what way is it a socialist budget? Have they taken huge amounts of money from the richest in society and redistributed it to the poorest in society? No. Have they completely rebuilt public services by taking money from the rich? No, they haven't. How is this a socialist budget? What they seem to be doing is trying to rebuild some public services like the NHS. Rebuilding it. How is that socialist? Socialism would be nationalisation of all public services. The governor not talking in any way about nationalisation of, for example, the water companies, which I think is something that there are certain arguments that can be made for. There isn't a mass nationalisation project on the horizon. There isn't a huge redistribution of wealth taking place. But of course, they have to inject this fear that people have. Keir Starmer is a socialist. The Labour Party is a socialist party. They're just like Jeremy Corbyn. They just want to take money from rich people or people who have grafted and worked hard all of their life. They want to take money from them people and give it to lazy parasites sitting on their sofas all day. They have to create this narrative. As I keep saying, it's about pushing a political idea, pushing this ideology of lower taxation for the richest in society, fewer regulations to protect workers, to protect the environment, to protect consumers. That is their goal. And in order to achieve that, you need to get people out to the ballot box to vote for parties like the Conservatives or Reform UK. And how do you do that? Well, you can't just come out and say, vote for this party because they're going to cut taxes for the rich. You have to be a bit more subtle about it. You have to make people angry with the poorest, angry with environmentalists, angry with anyone who goes against the idea of tax cuts for the rich or reduced regulations. Vile individuals. They don't care about the poorest in society. They don't care about fixing the NHS. It's all about pushing this type of narrative. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.